Hello there, ladies and gents. How the very devil are you? AndyManCam here. If you remember, a very long time ago, I test rode the Yamaha MT-09 Tracer on this channel and mostly was really impressed by it. One thing that really let me down was the horrible, niggly, jerky throttling. So imagine my utter joy when I heard that Yamaha had been spending extra time working on the fueling and the throttling, obviously after my comments, and had allegedly vastly improved the fueling on the replacement model, the Tracer 9. Well, the only way to find out was to come and get one myself, so I've come out into the countryside with this, the Yamaha Tracer 9. And although I've not been into bikes with screens, fairings, or even half fairings for a long time, I have to say, I think this thing is sexy. So, enough looking at it, let's get out and ride the thing. So, fast forward to a couple of minutes after I've just picked the bike up, and here we are on board, the Yamaha Tracer 9 2021. And just before we get onto the motorway, the quick boring bits. I mean, I haven't got the exact stats, this isn't a video like that. You can find all the stats you want on Google. This bike has about 110 horsepower, 90 odd newton meters of torque from its 889cc triple engine. And I'm going to start this little trip, as most of my trips do tend to start, with a quick blast on the motorway to get to the bendy bits. So that's about 80 miles an hour with the screen on the lowest setting, and it is buffeting the crap out of me. I stand up, beautiful, clean, quiet air. Sit down, sounds like I'm in the drum section of the orchestra. I'll pop the screen up a bit. The highest setting, that's a bit better, it's a bit quieter, but now it's drumming on my forehead. I mean, I should also add to that though that I am 6'4", which means my head is up quite high, but sadly I can't put the screen down low enough to stop the buffeting altogether. If I just raise myself by 6 inches above the seat, yeah, that's perfect like that. So maybe a short screen would be an option for this to make it usable. It's actually buffeting me so much, it's causing me to wobble the steering around. You can see that? I mean, I'm letting the movement happen, but that's a bit worrying. Okay, so just before I get to my junctions, a nice chance to try the cruise control, push the cruise button, hit the set button. Now we're cruising. And then you can go plus and minus. Looks like it's in 2 km/h increments. That works. Cruise control is good. That's very relaxing though, being able to cruise on the motorway without cramping the wrist like crazy. That's what I've been missing. And then brake to disengage, reset, get back in again. Or the cruise control button to disengage as well. Clutch also disengages it. Anyway, that's the motorway finished. Let's go and actually find some twisty action. As I decelerate into the slip road bendy thing, so the seat does feel very, very weird. I feel very much like the seat is pitching me forwards. I also feel like the seat is too far forwards, very short, and feels like this plastic trim here is taking up space that really should be given to the seat, because I've got no room to move backwards and forwards. It's just the one position, and it feels like it really ought to be 6 inches further back, because then the knee position for me more natural into the scallops of the tank. Yeah, weird. I don't know whether that's just me and my body shape. Oh, my ears are ringing after that motorway session. That's not good. So what else is there to know about this bike just while we try and find some bendies? It's got a dual 3.5-inch TFT display, which I am sad to report is quite difficult to see in bright sunlight, and when the sunlight was shining on the screen, all the dust was easier to see than the numbers themselves. And I have to be completely honest, don't really like the look of it either. I think it looks a bit cheap. It looks like, I don't know, some kind of a toy from the 80s, crossed with Jacques Cousteau's diving goggles. Get onto the technicals of it. We've got KYB electrically adjustable suspension front and back with 2 riding modes, A1 and A2, A2 being soft, A1 being hard. Currently I'm on the A2 for a nice cushy soft ride. That electrical adjustment only adjusts the damping though. Preload is manually adjusted front and back. See by the little knob on the top of both of the forks. Down there you can see the preload adjuster for the rear. Remote adjuster, which is a nice touch. It also has 10-step heated grips, and buried in the internals of the electronics there are 4 different riding modes. The way it was explained to me in the showroom was that 1 is the most aggressive, sporty throttling. 2 is the same power, softer throttling map. 3 is a much softer throttling map, and then 4 is the one that has the reduced power for the rain and the slippery conditions. This bike has a quick shifter, which so far, and down blipper, so far has been performing really, really well. It's very, very slick, nice and fast. And I haven't even been giving it the beans yet. The down blipper is really nice too. I had a quick go on a Triumph Tiger 900 GT yesterday. Very similar setup to this with the 890-ish cc triple engine, quick shifter, all of that stuff. And I found the quick shifter on that to be a bit clunky, to be honest, to the point where if I was to buy one of those, I would leave it out. Whereas this one on the Yamaha, really smooth on the downshift. Really fast and smooth on the upshifts. Yeah, that's an extra well worth having in my book. And of course all of these extras are standard on this bike because it's the GT model. A lot of these things won't be on the base level Tracer 9. It has no quick shifter, no electrically adjustable suspension, obviously no panniers. Really nice sound. Not getting on very well with the seat though. The roads look a bit sludgy too. Not very relaxing on a test ride of a bike with a €2,500 excess if I bin it. But of course, on the subject of binning it, this bike has a few gadgets to stop you doing that. It has cornering ABS, anti-slide, and anti-lift, which I think is a fancy word for anti-wheelie. Unless maybe it does something to stop the back wheel lifting in a stoppy situation, who knows? But yeah, there's plenty of gadgets on this machine that have been brought in new for the Tracer 9. All the things that were left off of the Tracer range up to this point for that no frills MT line thing, but now it seems like Tracer is branching out on his own as being able to rub shoulders electronically and gadget wise with all the other sports tourers in its bracket. Thing is, to be entirely fair to this screen now that I'm back in the Nationals again, if I duck my head down by, again, about 6 inches, I'm getting a little bit of drumming just on the very top of my head, but otherwise very quiet, and the top of the screen is still below my eye line. So I guess anybody up to about 5'10", it's probably going to be fine for you with the standard screen in the top position. And then obviously for people slightly more vertically challenged than that, you can put the screen down a bit. The sound from the bike is absolutely splendid. That's a great sound. I could listen to that soundtrack all day long. The question is whether I could sit on this seat all day long. This just isn't working for me. The seat just feels so short. It's putting pressure in the crease between my arse and legs because that's how short it is. Doesn't feel like there's any spreading of the weight at all. Right then, let's try suspension mode 1. So we've switched it onto the hard suspension now. See what the electrical adjustification stuff does to that. Plenty of juice to power through those sweepy bends. Nice bit of tank scallopy shoulder action as well to give you something to hook your knees onto. Ergonomics wise on the bike, I mean, yeah, I've moaned about the seat a bit. That's not working for me. If the handlebars feel like they're very close towards me, they're kind of obviously coming from my CB1000R. Wasn't really a fair test, but I felt at first like I was a bit squashed into the cockpit of this bike. Everything was a bit close and claustrophobic. The longer I spend here in the saddle, it's getting a bit more natural feeling, but it does still feel like the bars are a little bit close to me, although one of the beauties of this machine is it has the ability to adjust the bars forwards just by spinning the clamps around, and that takes the whole handlebars forwards and upwards a tiny bit, which could potentially be a good move for me. That would put things more kind of like there. Yeah, that would be a lot more natural feeling. Would probably also take away the exaggerated feeling that this seat is pitching me forwards, because my shoulders are back but my hips are forwards, and it's just everything feels a bit unnatural. The pegs are quite naturally placed, I think. I've got slightly less of a bend in my knees than I have on the CB1000R, which is a very, very welcome relief. But just enough of a bend, the pegs are high enough that it feels sporty. But of course, for those of you without the 34-inch inseam like I've got, you can also adjust the pegs upwards and backwards. It would be really interesting to be able to see how they feel in the adjusted position. Because the last thing you want to do when you spend, what, €14,000 that this bike costs on a new machine, and then immediately have to start buggering around with adjusting the ergonomics of the thing. It's a struggle I've already been having with my CB1000R, and it's a battle that I'm sad to say I'm slowly losing. Bridge Bridgestone T32 seems to be doing all right at keeping things under control in these slippery, wet conditions. Yeah, I'm not pushing it too far. Once again, there's that $2.5 grand excess to worry about, but yeah, no surprises yet. Even down into first, that's impressive. Definitely got enough power to get you into trouble, although it hasn't got so much of that top end rush that I've gotten used to with the CV1000R. Yeah, but in answer to that, I would also say that at the low end I feel like this has got just a bit more to give. Here we are, third gear, 3000 RPM. Not for any particular reason, just because I fancied that. Yeah, it pulls hard right from the bottom, and then there's a bit of a rush at around 7 again. So I think this would have more than enough power to keep me happy. Yeah, the heated grips thingy, you click on it, and then you can use this little thumb wheel here to change it through the 10 various settings. Let's stick it on 5 and see what happens. And then realise that I've left the bike in 6th gear and I'm doing 45 kilometers an hour. Can we pull away from that? Yes. Yes, indeedly we can. That's really nice, very smooth. So what about this throttling issue that I had with the original Tracer? If I come into this bend, let off the gas, yeah, that's a marked improvement on the old one. Same again, off the throttle, on the gas, very, very, very smooth. Well done, Yamaha! Finally, you've done it! That was pretty good. The real test will, of course, be what it's like in higher revs, because that's where the deceleration cut seems to be the most aggressive, so... Quite as smooth, but it is a lot smoother than it was on the last model. Well done, Yamaha, except for this screen, which is really starting to get on my because it's so friggin' noisy. Right, let's stop and have a look at all of her jubbly bits quickly, shall we? Right, so there she is, the Tracer 9 on the side stand, although the GT and I think also the base model both come with a centre stand as standard. I have to say, I think it's a great looking bike. They've done a wonderful job. Not so sure about this paint job. I really like the look of the Tech Camo one the most myself. It's a good looking machine. They've done a good job of taking what they had with the Tracer before, bringing it on a bit, making it a bit new and a bit more special. Although, now that they have the hard panniers for the GT model, I can't say that I like these very much. I think they're pretty ugly. But then again, it's panniers, isn't it? What are you going to do? It's a box on the side of your bike to put your gubbins in. The screen is immense, isn't it? It's just too much. Here's the crazy LED lights underneath here, which as far as I know are in fact the headlights. One of them is the main beam, one of them is the dip beam, and these two are in fact the turning lights. Although I could be wrong there. Yeah, because when you turn the bike on, this light is on because that's the dip beam. The switch here for the main beam, and now they're both on. I thought that these were going to be the headlights. Shows how much I know. As you may have noticed, there is apparently no end can on this bike whatsoever. Nothing, because everything is now tucked underneath in that box there, which is pretty ugly, but at least it's tucked underneath out of the way, eh? Whereas everybody else seems to be putting bigger and bigger bread baskets on the side of their bikes to get to the Euro 5 stuff. And on the subject of the Euro 5 stuff, apparently this bike has a tiny bit more torque, a tiny bit more power, and a tiny bit better efficiency than the outgoing model, so all of that sounds good. Whether that is actually noticeable in real life, I couldn't honestly tell you. Yeah, I just want to have a look at this seat situation. Pop the back seat, look at that, we've got some space in there. Not a bad sized boot. And then little hook in there, take the front seat off. And this is how the seat adjustment works. It's incredibly simple. There's a slot for the high one, a slot for the low one, and then you move this little spacer thingy forwards. And that changes where the seat goes. So now that's the seat in the lower position, which quite stupidly is now a bit further back. Why, Yamaha, would you assume that people who have longer legs want to sit closer to the handlebars? It's probably fair to assume if they've got longer legs, they're going to have slightly longer arms. And these spacers and things, that goes in there for when you've got the seat in the low position. Well, I'm going to give this a go in the low position, actually, just to see what that's like. So that's that Bosch back in, and look, it looks a lot more natural now. That's a bit silly. Maybe it'd be better to have the seat in the low position and have the seat built up by some professional agency or company that does that kind of thing. Oh, here, let's have a quick look at what we're dealing with the panniers, with the ignition key actually working to unlock those, but that is an optional extra. You have to pay extra for that, I think. I'm going to flip that little handle out, and then the box opens. Allegedly, you can fit a full-face helmet in here. And it looks like the whole thing is rubber sealed, so there should be a waterproof space in there. Yeah, not bad. I mean, very usable, definitely. Although, how do you get them off? Oh, that's how you get them off. Turn the key the other way, the handle pops out. And there you go, look at that. I'll show you that on the other side so you can see it better in the sunlight. Case comes off. That's a very minimal mounting system. I mean, that's a bit of a klutz, isn't it? But I suppose it could be worse. There's no frame, there's no scaffolding left there. Yeah. So that's the panniers. So here at the front end, we've got radially mounted calipers. Sadly, unlike on the Tiger 900 GT, ordinary brake lines, no braided action here. Then on the rear, hidden underneath the panniers, there are single pot Nissin calipers. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, anything else, feel free to ask a question. I probably don't know. I mean, I just really wanted to see how it feels to ride the thing. Well, definitely feels better in terms of my position with knees to the tank, shoulders to the bars. So that slight move backwards makes a hell of a difference. But it also does still feel like it's pitching me forwards. That's less than ideal. But now from the waist down, my legs are a bit cramped. Shame that. So by making a seat that's really short, but that can move down and back or up and forwards, instead of just making a seat that fills that whole space that can go directly up and down, Yamaha have really kind of hamstringed the seat completely. But maybe you can forget about that when it sounds like it does. It also seems like it's sharp as a tack as well. And even though I've now had the suspension on the A1 setting, I really wouldn't say I felt that it was harsh. I mean, the roads have been relatively smooth, the odd rough bit. I guess maybe if it was really rough, then I'd probably notice the difference a bit more. I can see that this bike would be very interesting and very enjoyable in the twisties. It's a shame that, as it is at the moment, it looks like it wouldn't be quite so comfortable to get to the twisties. In which case, I'm gaining nothing over my existing bike by buying one of these. What else have I not talked about? It's hard to remember. I should start making lists for these things. Vibration-wise, it's very, very smooth. Yamaha have done a great job with this engine, keeping the vibes down. Right now, 75 kilometers an hour, 6th gear, it's just nothing. It's silky smooth. On the motorway at just over 100 miles an hour, there is a bit of a buzz coming through the seat. A tiny little bit of a hum through the handlebars, but to be honest, considering the engine's singing along at 7,000 RPM, that's not really all that bad at all. Down at about 70, 80 miles an hour, everything seems to have switched places. There's more of a buzz through the bars now, and almost nothing at all through the seat. The buzz through the bars even is a very soft, gentle one. It's not, I don't think, the kind of finger-numbing buzz that would kill you after a few hours on the motorway. Really as quickly as being smashed in the face by the screen would anyway. And down at about 60 miles an hour, everything is nice and smooth. There's just a very gentle hum through the seat, the pegs and the bars, and I'll happily admit, far less buzzy than it is on my inline 4 CB1000R. Very surprising. Should really just quickly put a little bit of joy juice in here before we carry on. And also see, how is it to get onto the centre stand? Yeah, very easy, wonderful. Look at that, no filling surprises, no splashback, no silly bar across the front like in my Honda. That's very good. And I've just immediately got all excited and put far too much fuel in there. Oh well, this is my gift to them for the mileage, who knows. Oh, getting it off the centre stand isn't quite so easy. There we go. Yeah, so what else is there to talk about? I don't know really. Mirrors seem to be okay. I mean, they're pretty standard looking Yamaha parts bin jobbies, but they're pretty solid. Position of them is pretty good, to be honest. I've got quite wide shoulders, and yet I can still see beyond them very easily without having to do the elbow waggle. The handguards seem to be doing a good job. It's pretty cold today. When I was on my bike, I needed the heated grips. On this bike, for the beginning, I had the heated grips off completely, didn't really notice, and now I've got them on setting number 5, and yeah, they're nice and toasty. LED indicators all round. Nothing that you'd really need to worry about or change with those. Adjustable reach brake lever, but not clutch lever, and the clutch pull is extremely light. It's just a shame about that screen. That's really spoiling everything. It's so noisy. Now that's a bit weird with the fuel gauge. Let's just draw my attention back towards this display thing here. So on the left we've got rev counter along the top, speed in the middle, stuff about the quick shifter there on the right hand side, gear indicator on the right. We've got all the suspension mode, traction control, all that stuff in the middle, bit of cruise control settings, time in the bottom left, heated grips, and then settings. And over on the right here, you can then go into and change to whatever we want. I can have 2 fuel gauges. I can probably have 4 fuel gauges if I wanted. Yeah, so you can change those between fuel economy, trip time, cruise control, odometer, trip 1, trip 2, fuel economy average, fuel economy current, air temperature, coolant temperature. So loads of stuff, and you can choose to have those on any one of those 4 screens. But the weird thing is that the fuel gauge is full, half, 2/3 of a half, 1/3 of a half, and empty. And it looks like there's nothing between full and half, because I just put 7 or 8 litres into what I think is a 19-litre tank that was showing me that it was 1 knob in left from empty, yet now it's telling me the tank is full, so that's a bit misleading. The shortcuts of digital displays, eh? It's quite cool though that you can actually customise all of those. Look at that, just in case you were weird, you could have 4 fuel gauges on the screen at once. What is the point of that? I'd have thought that that option would have been greyed out if it was already on one of the other fields. I do love that sound though. Maybe I need to have a go on an MT-09. Maybe that'll be a bit more exciting with the nakedness. It's always more exciting when you involve the nakedness. Right then, well I think as I'm about to go onto the motorway, that's pretty much everything that I can think of. I'm really sorry if there's anything I've missed off. This was literally just a quick and dirty test ride because I had the bike for 1 single hour and already I've taken an hour and a half. And also purely because I wanted to see if I wanted to potentially buy one of these, because I'm sad to admit I'm actually thinking about trading in the Honda CB1000R. Don't get me wrong, I'm loving the CB1000R. I'm just thinking maybe it doesn't quite fit. But anyway. This has been the Yamaha Tracer 9. I've been AndyManCam. Thank you so much for watching. If you've come along to this video purely for the review and you liked what you saw, enjoyed what you heard, get yourself over to the channel, check out the rest of the videos. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra! And now, of course, there would be traffic when I'm already late to return the bike. Good job I'm not paying by the hour.